Hello and welcome to HorsePlayer Happy Hour, a very special edition of HorsePlayer Happy Hour. It's a Saratoga Six Pack for opening day. I was just at the track. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit. I have moved about 3.5 furlongs from Saratoga to the auxiliary offices of the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. I thought there was a placard behind me, but I guess it's not in shot after all, so don't worry, I'm not falling over. Not yet, anyway. Well, there's plenty of time for that tonight. Because it's a party atmosphere here in Saratoga. So happy to be here with you and so happy to be joined for at least part of this broadcast by a man who's nominally on vacation. You can probably guess the state from the palm trees in the background. Coming to us from the great state of California today, it is TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are things?
I'm good, Pete. I'm in the midst of, and maybe a moment where I'm going to have to cut out because we have to change over our rental car. Got a little bit of a vibration, so I'll have to move bags around and whatnot. But no, all's good. And I think this is absolutely the first time in my life for opening day of Saratoga that I'm actually closer to Del Mar than I am upstate New York. So no, it's all good. It's always fun to be in California for a few days. We're out here for a wedding, so looking forward to taking that in. And like you said, it's opening day up at the spa. There's nothing wrong with that.
It's very exciting, and what a year it is to be here. It's all the good vibes I was hoping for so far. Again, we'll get more into it. Let's tell folks why we're here, though. This is a live stream. On today's show, we're going to have the 5th, 6th, and 7th race from Saratoga. That's going to be part of the show. But we're really here to cover the first half of this contest. And it's a very special contest because what it is a way for people, 3 different ways for people to win their way in to the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. You pay $20, and the first way I'll mention is you can feed in traditionally. You win your way into a qualifier on Saturday, and then if you do well in that qualifier, you can win your $10,000 prize. But it's also an interconnected series that we've been doing most of the year since April. It'll go right up to before the Breeders' Cup, and you can win your way in through the tour. And one way you do it is you're our overall tour leader. Maybe at some point in the show, we'll get a chance to take a look at that tour leaderboard and show you how that's going. But another one where you don't even have to have the 8 scores needed or 8 scores allowed to potentially win the tour title outright. We also have a system of playoffs. So anybody who finishes in the top 2 in any of these HorsePlayer Happy Hour weeks automatically gets into this playoff system, which will allow its winner to also win the BCBC seat. And, oh, by the way, the top tour finishers who don't win in directly by finishing in the top 2, they get in the playoffs as well. So that'll be an 80-person, basically, private contest with a $10,000 prize. And all of these Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seats, well, not all of them, but 2 of the 3, the 2 that are part of the HorsePlayer Happy Hour Tour, you pay nothing for them. There's no tour fee. This is courtesy of In the Money Media and the Breeders' Cup, and we are super duper excited to be bringing this stuff to you. We encourage you to participate. You can play up to 3 entries, $20 a pop, and all of the proceeds, all of the VIG, as it were, goes to charity. Matt, what is going on out there?
Well, we are in the midst of moving the cars, so I'm listening, and I'm going to chime in on top of what you were saying. You know, the way that we kind of designed it, and I apologize if the camera work is spotty at best, but
you're no Ernie Munich, I'll tell you that.
The idea, trying to do it on the phone and hold it up is not the easiest thing.
No, I was worried about that plan of yours, but I didn't want to be a naysayer.
It was either this or I guess I could just kill the visuals. You can just listen. But, I think the way that we set up the whole thing was to incentivize folks to play as frequently as possible. And I think just the way that the playoff system works along with the regular season, I think there is enough of a reason for folks, especially if you're a diehard, you have every reason to get involved for the reason that you laid out, just strictly from a sort of a positive EV standpoint. This is a no-brainer. And I think the price point on a week-to-week basis for folks who may be new to contests or maybe want to finally dip their toe into the water, I think this is a great opportunity to get involved and kind of cut your teeth a little bit.
I'm going to talk a little bit about this race at Saratoga that's going to kick off the contest. Just encouraging folks, if you're on the fence about taking another entry, please do so. It all goes to a great cause. Even throw in one entry where you just play all the 4s. We won't judge around here. We'll appreciate you supporting our aftercare charities. We'll talk more about those.
2 minutes. I'll come back in.
Yeah, that's cool. We can do the race without you, Matt. Come right back whenever you are able. But let me talk through this first race. So my top number in here was the number 7, Echo Zulu. For me on paper, really looked like a runner. The dam has dropped 8 winners from 9 starters, including Echo Town. These gun runners in general have been very impressive so far. So I'm very curious to see how number 7, Echo Zulu, gets along in this spot as we approach this 5th race here at Saratoga. I also want to encourage folks to feel free to drop in some comments, especially if Matt might be a little bit in and out. You all can help me program the show. And I'll start off. Actually, I'm going to wait, Tom, to read your excellent comics. I think Matt would appreciate that. So we'll wait till he's on the air and we'll do that one. But other folks with comments on what they think is going to happen in the races today, I'm all capped up on the back half of this Saratoga card, so we can chat about those races. I've looked a little bit at what's going on this weekend, not as up on that as I usually am, just because of the pure bedlam that is opening day at Saratoga. And then we also had the Woodbine Pick 6 force out today, so that also took up some bandwidth. So we can talk about the big races over the weekend, but if you ask me about the 3rd on Saturday, I'm not there yet. I will be by this weekend, and this weekend we're going to have a lot of extra content on In the Money Media, In the Money Players, In the Money Podcast.com. I can't remember my own website. It's hot here in Saratoga. Did I mention that? But we're going to have a lot of stuff covering racing all around the country with a big emphasis on the Haskell. We will definitely get Matt's take on the Haskell as well, which is a win and you're in race. We'll share Oracle 65's comment, pleased about the return back to Thursday. The only Thursday I was worried about doing it was today, just knowing that I wanted to be doing very well over at the track, but it's well worth it to pop in here. And I think future Thursdays will be all the easier. Joe Solito points out that both JK and I can be found on YouTube right now. His America's Day at the Races shift just began. Maybe one day he'll be on the early shift and can come join us on one of these shows. We haven't unfortunately had a chance to have him on as much as we'd like, but we'll make that happen. Trish Smith asks about Kentucky Pharaoh after the scratches. Golden Pal will be tough, but think maybe Kentucky Pharaoh can get a place. And I would agree with that completely. I mean, Golden Pal is your ultimate all or nothing horse. And I'm going to wait and dive deeper into this race when we have Matt Bernier back with us, because I know he had looked at the stakes later and wanted to chat about them. But so we can talk about our picks for a second. But I mean, Kentucky Pharaoh, that's a pedigree that I've been very interested in ever since the switch to turf, and be interesting to see. I mean, somebody's got to run second. I mean, and maybe first, because here's the thing about Golden Pal. If you like a price horse in that race, I would heartily encourage you to bet your price horse to win or use in picks. And then in your exacta, just play a one-way exacta Golden Pal over your horse. I don't think you need to use Golden Pal in second. I think he is a classic win or run out type. So Lady Scarlet has made the lead in this spot. Echo Zulu, my pick, the one that I mentioned, out there in the Winchell colors in second place. Both have what looked to be some impressive speed on. Solasta, a horse that I was trying to beat, ended up getting bet pretty hard, down to 2-1, and looks to be maybe in an okay spot there. Let me make this full screen. Maybe I can come up with something better. I see Matt is back in the car. He'll can join us momentarily. How are things, my friend? We're trying to see if my Echo Zulu can get the job done here. Lady Scarlet has been looking pretty impressive on the lead, but I'm hoping here when set down for the drive, Echo Zulu is going to get this job done here at a very square 4-1. That's a very nice price on this horse, who I thought was kind of a standout in this field based on the female family, and looks to have put this one to bed a very long way out. So not a bad winner for the start of the show. We'll see how many. Yeah, we'll see how many in the contest had that one. Nothing came back to get into it from back of the pack. So we'll see. I 104.69. I haven't been paying attention to what the other split of that baby race was. So we'll have plenty of context to see. And maybe that's something that Sean Tugel and I will talk about. We're going to have another episode of Baby Talk coming up very soon. That's our little collaboration with Gainesway Farm. that we'll be doing throughout the rest of the racing season, with a big focus on the 2-year-old races, handicapping them, and also taking a look at freshman sires and other angles. But surprisingly nice mutual there for that run.
Have you had any sort of inkling of I mean, that was the very first piece of any racing I've seen today so far. Has there been any kind of funny business with the track, or everything kind of straightforward so far?
To be honest with you, it's been such a social day, Matt. My gut is that it's been fair, but I have to remember, I'm not taking notes. I'm not doing my usual. Sure. There's no bias book out, writing in little notes of what each race looked like, just because of the very social nature of the day. It's bedlam over there. You got a whole lot of people out. Watch the first race down on the apron, and it was great with the signature. And they're off at Saratoga race call, and everybody's karaokeing along with John Imbrial, and just a super enjoyable vibe and feeling there. And I think you'll appreciate your return to this place in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. When we went up there last year, we had, I think there was only one show that we did for NBC, and it was for the Alabama. And it was the most bizarre vibe that I've ever had, where you go there and you expect to see 30, 40,000 people on any given Saturday. And there was quite literally maybe 200 people total, and they were all people that were working either with the horses or at the track. The backyard, there was grass everywhere. I've never seen that kind of situation. So now here we are. We get to at least hopefully take in some good quality racing for the rest of the meet. And I'm very much looking forward to getting up there. It's very minimum. It'll be Labor Day weekend for me, if not also Travers weekend. There may be something else brewing. So really looking forward to getting up there.
That would be very, very cool. We'd love to have you. Let's talk about the contest itself a little bit. We end up with 182 entries. That's good. That feels like the bounce back that we wanted for today. People responding to the Saratoga Six Pack format. Let us know in the comments, by the way, what your opinions are on the different formats. We could have potentially pulled in another track today and done a whole show with 6 or 8 races, whether it was bringing in Woodbine or Gulfstream. I just figured so much of the bandwidth today is on Saratoga. I didn't want to mess with that. Honestly, if I'd noticed Woodbine were doing a force out, I might have said, maybe we should do 2 tracks. But let me know. Do you like 1 track, all the last 6 races at Saratoga? Do you prefer the 3-track format where we can do the whole show on here with a live stream in an hour and a half? I want listener feedback to help us decide. But that 182 number is terrific. That means that the top 18 will win $179 entries into the 7/17 Saturday Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifier. 2 people after that will get breakage, and then the top 10 will qualify for tour points. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. And then, as I did say before, the top 2 get automatically entered into our playoffs. And look at that. Look who's on top once again, Matt Bernier. David Browning. I mean, it's 1 race, but still, the guy has been en fuego. He's in our top spot. Really enjoy talking to him and have been following this tremendous run. He's the exact kind of player I had in mind when I thought about this tournament. He's played in the big ones when he's qualified in, but he's not putting down a brick to play in the biggest money tournaments. And we wanted to come up with a year-long competition that wasn't reliant on somebody having a heavy bankroll. I mean, the NHC Tour is a super cool event. It produced a budding superstar named Jonathan Kinchin a few years back. But you need to spend money to have any kind of shot at that. I love the idea, and I know you love the idea of having this basically 20 race interconnected contest where you could play in it for $400 total for all 20 weeks potentially.
Yeah, and I think it rewards consistency. It's not a matter of you had that one big week or that big weekend and you won everything, which I'm not, dumping on. I mean, look, I've been fortunate to be in that position as well and take advantage of it. But I think this also rewards just that consistent week in and week out solid play. And you've seen that from David. I mean, at this point, it feels like every week when we do one of these, he's in the top 10 at least, if not even better than that. So I just, for me, there's something rewarding too also about the idea of, you show up each and every week and you not only give a good account of yourself, but I think you prove that it's not a fluke. You're someone who you're playing against some of the best names that there are as far as contest play is concerned. And you continue to show that you are one of the best. So I think it's one of those interesting ways to identify who, some folks may not be familiar with some of the names, but you're getting more and more familiar with these names because they continuously show up in the top half of the leaderboard, and even better than that, the top 10 or 15% of the leaderboard. So there's something to me that I really appreciate, the consistent nature of this and the consistency that some of these players have shown.
I think that's very, very well put, and a good analysis of it. David Browning, he's got his work cut out ahead of him today, of course, but one of 31 people who picked that runner in the first race here of our Saratoga Six Pack. Now already we have some friendly disagreement on the comments about which format is better between the one track and the three track. We'll get to some of those, but I wanted to start with this one that goes right to you, Matt. Welcome to California, Tom's neck of the woods. Looks like Southern California says you got to get up to Northern California one day. Any travel plans along those lines? I'm not sure. Oh, there's Matt.
We were just leaving area that we're back. We just left Ojai after a few days. That's about as far north as I've ever been. And it doesn't classify as Northern California. But it was a good little run. We had a good time checking out a place that I've never heard of, but my wife was very fond of it. And we had a great time. And now we are on our way, certainly going south now. We're going to be down in Malibu for the next 5 days or somewhere thereabouts for a family wedding. So it should be a good time.
Very cool. Love Southern California. Once we master this whole being in two places at once thing, it'll be Saratoga and Del Mar for me as often as possible. Linda chimes in, pleased with the pick in the first race. Hope some folks out there, a lot of people came up with obviously that runner themselves, but hopefully I was able to lead a few to the water in that situation. And then here's our disagreement. We've got Joe, who loves the one card format, and then Linda enjoys the looking at different tracks. For me, when I'm betting seriously, I much prefer one. I don't even like doing two if I'm betting seriously, but I get it from an entertainment standpoint, being able to go race. That's really cool for a little live stream. So I don't know, maybe we'll mix it up this year. What's your gut on that, Matt?
Well, I tend to agree with you. I personally like being able to just sink your teeth into one specific track and pay attention to the tendencies and this, that, and the other, as opposed to, let's just use a standard Saturday kind of event where you've got 12 races and they're from all over the place. It's hard to really get a good feel for each one of those tracks. But at the same time, I think there is something to the idea of, let's just say, look, you've got great weather up there today. Let's just say you had a day where it was a washout. I think there is something to the idea of bringing in other tracks where, I don't want to say you're going to get a fairer result, because that implies that an off track is not a fair result, but you're going to get, I think, a more formful result, as opposed to perhaps some of the randomness that weather can obviously play in racing. So, I kind of like, especially during the summer, I like the Saratoga runs. Crank it out, 6 races, in and out, have some fun, and then you get ready to tee it up for Del Mar. So that would be my call. But at the same time, like you say, this is all about what the players would prefer.
Well, normally we will have Del Mar, won't we? Because Del Mar, they will run at the same time on Thursday. So, that's going to definitely be a pull. But I could also see, when it's particularly good Saratoga Saturday stuff, maybe doing this all Saratoga format and then having more time in between races to look ahead and talk about that stuff. Chris chimes in, another person who likes the one track format. So we're definitely trending that way from folks. So that's interesting data point. Obviously, very small sample. Keep the comments coming in. Trish, another one who likes the 6-pack format. That's very good to hear. Here we had a question, Matt, that I was dealing with when you were getting in the car, also from Trish, who's interested in Kentucky Faro potentially after scratches, thinking maybe to place to Golden Pal. My initial advice was, what I would do in this spot personally is, if I liked a horse who was a price, I would want to bet that horse to win or on top in your horizontal exotics, and then come back with the exacta as place, that concept. Mike Maloney actually talks about it in this book that's right here over my shoulder, Betting with an Edge, that very simple saver routine. When we get Matt back in a few minutes, we'll get his take on that whole concept of the exacta as place, and also see who he likes in that race. Joe also mentions the thing that Matt just mentioned, this idea that with one track, you do have to deal with the weather. He mentions our very own DG meteorologist, DG weatherman, Marshall Sterling over at In the Money. You can follow him at G1 Handicapping on Twitter. And he does do those racing forecasts that can definitely help you in your work. But my question, Matt, was your general thought about the concept of using the exacta as a more sophisticated place bet, and then to get your thought on the quick call today.
I broke up a little bit. I just heard quick call at the end. So, for me, Golden Pal, I didn't really think there was too much to get too cute about, and I get it. Perhaps it's a matter of the layoff is going to be the thing that is his undoing. But, I don't know, and we've talked about it. Turf sprints are not my forte. I just have a very difficult time imagining if he takes any step forward, isn't he just better than everyone else in there? Then I guess your question becomes, who do you round it out with? And maybe that was the question you asked. I don't know. Do you look at a horse like the runner down on the inside? I assume he's not scratched out, Kentucky Pharaoh, where they tried to stretch him out and they've gone longer with him. But I do wonder if maybe this is an opportunity where that stamina is going to play. 5.5, I feel like you do get a little tricky, where things aren't quite as cut and dry as just burn out there. That extra half furlong, I think some stamina comes into play. I thought maybe he was an interesting one that could perhaps round things out, but acknowledging that we've talked about this in the past. Turf sprints are not my cup of tea.
I do think that's a reasonable alternative. The other one I thought was interesting, and maybe I'm influenced by the fact that CJ Johnson of CJ Thoroughbreds is sitting with us today up in the secret spot over there at Saratoga Racecourse. But he made a compelling case for his runner Rebel Posse, and you could just tell owner energy kind of before races sometimes, and he definitely had that. I think my horse is going to run well energy. Positive reports from the barn on Rebel Posse. And I thought it was also maybe an interesting idea for one to come running in the number. And my point about Golden Pal I was making is I do think he's a bit of a win or run out type. If he's moved forward at all, he wins. Sure. I think we all agree on that. But this is a horse that, eventually they did end up selling to Coolmore, but was supposed to sell to Coolmore, I think last year, didn't vet, and then hasn't been seen. So, the horse obviously has some issues. And I would imagine when that deal was finally made, it was made at some kind of discount as to what the original plan was going to be. But I'll also say this. It's a typical racing, right? You can tell stories from either side about the same thing. Wesley Ward, not a trainer who's going to hesitate to scratch, as we've seen on many, many occasions, if he doesn't think that the horse is right. So that's why I ultimately did side with Golden Pal. But I'd say if you have an idea against, absolutely go with it. And I think it's a really interesting question. Let me ask you this. If for contest purposes, would you have tried to turn Golden Pal into a free square here? Or would you have said, you know what, it's not going to be any points anyway. I'm going to try to get something in that might pay more to place than his win place combined?
I think I would need to have a strong conviction about one of the other alternatives. And acknowledging that maybe they're not the most likely winner, but you could make a legitimate argument that such and such horse could potentially get the job done. For me, I had a hard time looking at the PPs and saying, if he regresses any, for me, it would just be kind of throwing a dart, trying to find who it's going to be. Because I didn't really think there was one that stood out head and shoulders above everyone else outside of Golden Pal. If he wins, sure, you're not going to collect much, but we've heard Jonathan talk about it, and I start to kind of fall into that mentality now too. I'd rather collect the points. If I think he's just going to win, I'm just going to kind of chalk it up and say, let me get out of here with a couple bucks, and maybe we take advantage of that. And in the long run, maybe those $2 or whatever it may end up being is enough to put me over the top or get me into the top 10, get some points for a contest like this.
Especially because it is only a 6-race contest. You have limited opportunities to get points. Got a couple of other thoughts on this race from the crew. Chris mentions the B horse being potentially 2nd of July, decent debut. Second start was a monster race, says Chris, and follows that up with suggesting to look past the BC race. And looking at the company of the last. That's not one I came up with, but it's an interesting case for sure.
Pete, one of the other things I'll mention, you brought up Rebel Posse. One of the programs that I use loves the horse, arguably the fastest in the race. And there's also something to be said, at least in my opinion, of horses who run against older horses and now drop back in against 3-year-old restricted company. And that's exactly what Rebel Posse did at Lone Star in that most recent run. So, that to me is a really intriguing angle, in that this could, in theory, be a little bit of class relief. So maybe the figs don't suggest that this is one of, if not the fastest, depending on what you want to look at. But I think you get a little hidden class relief going from the older horses back into the 3-year-old restricted company.
I know that's an angle you love, and I think it's a good one because a lot of people just don't even pay attention to that. And that point that you made about the figure, that was also something CJ Johnson mentioned, and it wasn't even the program you're talking about, because he was mentioning just on I think he uses the Ragozin sheets, and apparently the last Ragozin sheet number of Rebel Posse, the same as what Golden Pal did run as a 2-year-old. Now, he admitted, obviously, Golden Pal, if he's right, is supposed to improve past that, but also seems to think his horse is getting better every day and goes here with every chance. So make of that what you will, folks. We'll see how that runner can do. Little bit of a production meeting in the middle of the show. This is a comment more for
Sure.
Craig, I think, to note that I think, why don't we talk about the Haskell Stakes and potentially use this as a cutout for our friends at Breeders' Cup on social media. Matt, I know you've had a chance to look pretty thoroughly at this year's Haskell, and very curious to get your thoughts on this big summer fixture down there on the Jersey Shore. Do you have a strong opinion in the race? Give us your overview of it.
I think it's a really good race. 7 horses. I know a lot of people look at it and say not the biggest field, tough to bet. I continue to disagree with that. I think these races can offer great opportunities for overlays, because some of the shorter prices, I think Mandaloun still has a big chance. I know he's a little quirky. I know he may hang I don't want to say hang at the end, but he kind of pulls himself up when he makes the front. Job's done. Well, we're going to have to work on that. But with the way that this race, I think anyway, could set up on paper, I think Following C has to go. I think Hot Rod Charlie, even with the blinkers off, is going to be relatively close. I have to assume Midnight Bourbon's going to be forwardly placed. There's, to me, enough speed in the race for Flo to sit back in that kind of pocket position, maybe 2 or 3 lengths off of it. And if he can come with that kind of run that he did in the Pegasus, I just think Mandaloun is still better than maybe he gets credit for. And he's not going to be any kind of brilliant price. I would prefer 5-2. He's 2-1 on the morning line. If you can get 2-1 or 5-2, I think I would take it. I think Mandaloun still has a big chance to be one of the best 3-year-olds in this crop.
Glad to see you sticking to your guns with Mandaloun. I mean, it wasn't pretty last time, but there are excuses to be made, and a bounce back could be in order. I can't get off of Midnight Bourbon, though. I think that attacking that fast pace in the Preakness, the horse ran really well, all things considered. From an ability point of view, I don't have him too far behind Rombauer. And Rombauer being one of the ones I would have the highest rated of the crop right now, based on the work they've done so far in the spring and summer. And I just think Midnight Bourbon's going to get an absolutely perfect trip. I think you're right. Following C is going to go. I don't know. Maybe Hot Rod Charlie tries to sit right off. In basically, whether Midnight Bourbon ends up attacking, whether he ends up sitting off of Following C, or whether he ends up sitting off of Following C and Hot Rod Charlie, I like the trip this horse is going to get. I know you've been a big fan in the past, Matt. Where are you these days with Midnight Bourbon?
I think he is still just as honest as they come, which is a very admirable trait. He's going to run his race. The thing that I'm a little curious about, and I think totality-wise, the Preakness, a case can be made that he ran the best race, given how close he was to the hot pace, and he actually put a more than neck in front. He was a length and a half clear before Rombauer ran him down. I'm curious from a speed figure standpoint where the improvement's coming from, because I fear I don't want to say plateaued, because that makes it sound like he's not going to get any better ever. But, I mean, you go back to the Lecomte, we have 5 consecutive races between 90 and 96. 3 of them were 96s. I'm a little worried that he's not taking the step forward that maybe some of the other 3-year-olds are at this point. That may be unkind, because it's still pretty early in the grand scheme of things. But for a horse who has at least run a decent amount like this one has, I want to see that forward move. And even if he does take a step forward, say he cracks that 100 buyer, I mean, there's at least 2, if not 3 horses outside of him that I think are capable of earning a 100 kind of buyer. So I like him. I think he's a prime underneath candidate. At the same time, you're going to get the best price on him out of the 4, the big 4, what I'm going to call them as. So basically, I'm not going to talk anybody off. Those are my concerns. But I do understand the point from a trip standpoint. And again, going back to that Preakness effort, I mean, he's a very likable horse. I've liked him forever. I think he's a neat runner, and I'll be curious to see what we get. I'm curious your thoughts. I mean, it's fair to say the X factor in the race is Following C, correct?
No doubt about it. This horse has run very, very fast and looked very, very good, and has that late developing look that we can see make impacts in races like the Haskell and the Travers year in, year out. And oh, by the way, could potentially get the best trip of all if everybody decides if nobody runs with him and it's a speedy day at Monmouth. He could put them in chase mode. Very interesting runner.
The pedigree worries me a little bit. There's a lot of sprint in there, and it makes me think that, one turn is really where he's going to flourish. But boy, what he's done in these 2 most recent runs, and even his career debut, I didn't think was bad when he was out at Santa Anita. The 2 most recent runs are both spectacular visually. I don't know what he was necessarily running against, and this is certainly going to be the thing that turned me off for him from a win standpoint was just the number of firsts that he's going to be encountering. But you have to acknowledge, to your point, if everybody else kind of plays a game of chicken and Joel is aggressive from the inside and they clear off to the front, I believe Timeform US has this color-coded blue from a pace standpoint, thinking that this is going to be a rather moderate tempo. If that's the case, even if this horse may not be a true 1.25 mile type, which we don't know yet, it's too early, but at Monmouth Park getting 1 1/8 miles with a relatively cushy trip on the front end, I mean, I could certainly see a scenario where this horse we go into it saying it's the Hot Rod Charlie, Mandaloun, Midnight Bourbon, the Triple Crown runner show, and it's the horse who has never run a stakes race before who ends up upsetting everything.
I have some fixed odds here, Matt.
Let's talk.
Originally, we were meant to have the fixed odds out and rocking and rolling in New Jersey for this one. Still waiting for the governor's signature, I guess, or some sort of regulatory holdup that I don't think they're going to have it by Saturday. But it does push me more in that Midnight Bourbon Following C angle, just because I feel Hot Rod Charlie 5-4, Mandaloun 7-4. Those numbers are short enough where you have a potential Following C 11-2 and a Midnight Bourbon 13-2. I feel like that's clearly where the value is, because I also, it's a 4 contender race. I think everybody agrees about that. And then when you're getting such better prices on those 2, if that was the case, that would make the decision for me.
100%. I mean, I priced it out and looked at it. I have Hot Rod Charlie at 9-5. So that would be certainly a sort of fade for me in that spot. I wouldn't be touching that number. As far as Mandaloun is concerned, I made him 5-2, but I was splitting hairs between the 2-1 and 5-2. It was kind of right in that tweener area. Nonetheless, the fixed odds price available still doesn't cut the mustard. So that would be a pass for me as well. You bring up the Following C number and the Midnight Bourbon number. I made Midnight Bourbon 6-1. That's about a 14% chance of getting the job done by my estimation. And Following C, I made him 5-1, which is roughly 17%. So those 2 prices are basically spot on. And this is another instance, too, where I think the beauty of the idea of fixed odds, and you can do it parimutually as well. There's nothing wrong if you think you're getting 2 overlays. You have to make sure that percentage-wise the numbers end up checking out, knowing that you're effectively guaranteeing a losing wager with one of them. But there's nothing wrong with saying, I think these 2 horses, by my math, I have them at 17% and 14%. So that's 31%, roughly a 2-1 shot that one of them could end up getting the job done. If you can get 2-1 odds combined with those 2 betting them, that's a different way to approach it that I don't think people necessarily immediately think of.
Yeah, it's a way that I like quite a bit, something I've done plenty in my time overseas with the ability to go fixed odds. I don't want to give short shrift to Hot Rod Charlie. We've talked about him, but more in passing. Obviously, you think he goes with a real chance at those 9-5 odds. Let me know what you think of this horse and what his future might look like.
I think he's the most likely winner of the race. While I'm picking Mandaloun, and while we've made the cases for the other 2 runners, or I agree with you, the big 4, the other 3 horses just feel like they're kind of overmatched in here. Hot Rod Charlie probably still doesn't get the credit he deserves. I mean, that run in the Belmont Stakes was arguably the best 3-year-old performance of the last handful of years outside of the horse that beat him in essential quality. And the equipment change is interesting. I'm not looking at it as a positive or a negative. I think maybe just Doug O'Neill, and I haven't read the quotes. I'm not sure what the logic behind it was, if they want to try to make a concerted effort to take him off the pace. I don't know that I love that either. I think he's the kind of horse that you use his natural speed. You go right to the front, or you're up there prompting the pace. And from a numbers standpoint, I mean, if he runs back to the Belmont, he's very clearly the fastest in the race. And even if he regresses some, let's say he goes back to the Derby, a low 100 kind of buyer, he's still right there. So I think he's a really neat horse. I think he deserves the opportunity here. I'm more interested in finding out. We'll find out how the race plays out on Saturday. I want to know what the next step would be, because do you send him to Saratoga to run in the Travers and have that, I think from a sporting standpoint, it would be awesome to have another matchup between he and Essential Quality. Or do you keep him at home? And do you run him in the Pacific Classic, where the Breeders' Cup is going to be? Mile and a quarter, the older horses out on the West Coast. I'm high on a couple of them, but I know some people think they're a little bit of a tepid group. I don't know if that would be a terrible idea. He would be one of the favorites, if not the outright favorite, in the Pacific Classic against older horses. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Saturday goes and what that eventually sort of leads to for the next step for not just Hot Rod Charlie, but Mandaloon and some of the other ones too.
Must-see TV with major Breeders' Cup implications in this year's Haskell Stakes. Okay, we've got a few minutes left before this next race at Saratoga. I am guessing we're getting close. Yeah, 3 minutes to this race number 6. Let's see what I liked in here. I'm trying to remember which race this is in the second leg of our pick six. Apologies, juggling a few too many balls. I like number 2, Alba's Star. When we did the show with Marshall Graham, we did an In the Money plus show with Marshall going over some of the early card races and looking at this pick six. And I made a case that Alba Star could be alone on the lead, and felt like that was a pretty decent race that Alba Star comes out of, with a winner who's already managed to repeat. The favorite was on my short list, number 5, Kitten by the Sea. Numbers that fit, trouble in the last 2 starts, having trouble getting a clean run last time, maybe too wide, 2 starts back. Catching booking of Irad Ortiz Jr. 9 to 5 is too short, but if I'm playing multis, I'm going to have some 5s in the mix. Maybe the interesting one at the prices is the 8 Choose Happiness. This one did finish ahead of Alba Star and looks like she might just be better on turf. And those horses, sometimes people expect regression and they go on improving. It's an angle I've been using a lot in terms of trying to find decent price runners. So those are the 3 that I like. I might mess around with them, starting off some picks here in this next one at Saratoga. What else? Have you looked at any of the other Monmouth card? Do you have a plan, Matt? Are you going to be looking to bet the Haskell individually, or is that a pick sequence you might get involved in? I know they got a lot of stakes racing down the shore this weekend.
Yeah, so going through when we talked about pricing it out and comparing it to the fixed odds that are available, I don't know that I'm going to get the price on the horses that I think are the most likely winners. Therefore, I think you need to kind of create some value. I think you can do that via the daily double. I mean, that's one of my favorite ways to go about it. If I don't think I'm going to get the price I want on the win end on a horse, I'll piggyback and use the race prior and try to get something home there. I wish there wasn't as much speed in the United Nations as it looks like there is, because I genuinely believe in Trubovon. I think he's a legitimate grade 1 caliber runner. I like that Chad is stretching him out as well. I think that speed can play even better. And I'm not convinced he is a need-to-lead sort of runoff type. I mean, he showed in that run on July 4th last year at Belmont Park that he can rally from many lengths off of it. So I do believe in him. I love that Flavian Pratt, who continues to get mounts for Chad. I think that's an important thing to keep note of. Trubovon's a horse I want to keep an eye on. I've never believed in Masterpiece, so I'm going to try to fade him, despite the fact that it sounds like, everyone has said that the entire barn has been high on this horse since they got him. Frankly, I just haven't seen it on the racetrack. He's fine to me, and just fine. So I think that's probably the way that I'm going to approach this sort of the late double anyway. You have Arklow in there. I think he's going to take some money. Trubovon, though, with the outside draw, no bargain. but I have faith. Flavien Prat's riding as well as anyone right now. I think maybe I want to try to hook up a Tribhuvan Mandaloun double between the United Nations and the Haskell and maybe get a fairer price, put it that way.
Makes perfect sense to me. You've been high on Tribhuvan a long time. It looks like a spot that suits. It's a home game. There's a lot going right for that one. With as much speed as there is, I do think Arklow, depending on what other horses you're planning to use, should probably be kept on side. What a cool old boy. Shout out to Arklow and our friends over there at Donegal Racing, Elliot Honecker, longtime listener. And it's just amazing. I mean, is it me or has Arklow been running as long as we've been doing podcasts, Matt?
Well, and the crazy thing is, too, and part of what I love about the horse, Brad Cox recognized that he was kind of tailing off form. And I think many people would have just chalked it up and said, well, he's 6 years old. He's probably getting a little long in the tooth. Maybe he just doesn't have that late kick anymore. He made the equipment change to put the blinkers on 4 starts back. And you could make a case purely on speed figures that they've been the 4 best races of his career. And which is wild. To your point, he's 7 years old now. So I think Brad Cox deserves a lot of credit too for being willing to say, you know what? Maybe we still think there's something there. Maybe this will be the thing that unlocks Pandora's box. And sure enough, here you are. You're sitting on 4 races in a row that he has run, I think, as good, if not better, than anything he had done earlier in his career.
Let's look at this race at Saratoga as they're going in the gate. Chris Couples is with me. He has 2 over 5.11. He makes his case on the 11. Maybe it woke up last time, sitting behind a slow pace, off turn, trip, wins for fun. What was she facing? That's the question, and we're going to learn a lot more here. But certainly one that makes sense to put underneath in this spot. Oh, kind words from Michael, who appreciates our advice on the shows. We really appreciate you, Michael, very active on Twitter as well. And we encourage everybody, not just here to be part of the conversation, but also to hit us up on Twitter with whatever you want to talk about, pretty much sports, horse racing, smoking, barbecue, whatever it happens to be. Hit us up at Bernier_Matt, and then I'm at Looms Boldly. All right, we are off. The 2 had a terrific break. They do look like they're going pretty quick from how strung out they are. So maybe that's going to come back and bite us. But there was a long shot. I am remembering in the earlier turf race, long shot led 99.6% of the way. And I felt very bad for my friend Anthony, who was live in the pick 4 on that one. And it was one of those things where the only time his 11-1 shot wasn't in the lead was right there on the wire.
Was that the wire?
Oh my God. This is slow. I mean, I don't know how it could be 24:59 and be that strung out, but that might be a very good thing as it turns out for Albastar, though Kitten by the Sea, that big favorite we talked about, is in a really strong attacking position. So Albastar is going to have to be good to get this one done. Choose Happiness, we talked about as well, very much in the mix, just a couple of lengths off the pace. Looks like Kitten by the Sea is making that move to the turn. We're going to find out what Albastar's fate on the day is very shortly here, but this is not easy when you have that heavy favorite breathing down your neck. Who looks like to be making runs from the back? There's somebody cruising up there in the blue silks. That looks like number 6. I'm not sure which runner that is. Meanwhile, up top, it does appear that the favorite has wrested control of this one. I'm hoping Choose Happiness can maybe switch leads and come in with a late run. The 6 looks to have flattened out. Kitten by the Sea. Yeah, we got one who made a little run through on the inside. The 4 finishing very strongly. This one could be head and head here to the wire, but it looks like the 4 is going the better. And it's going to come 4, 5, maybe 8, dead tight for third there in the 6th race at Saratoga. We'll see how that all shakes out and how it affected the leaderboard in just a couple minutes' time.
You know who I assume the riding assignments that I have listed are still what they are. Forgive me for not having all the scratches all over the place. But Eric Cancel, if it was him again, I feel like we've seen it in all sports, and it was Cancel. You see those.
He was also, Matt, he was also on that 11-1 that almost won. It was a great run.
I tell you what, he feels like that young player in whatever sport you pay attention to, who has always shown glimpses, but just takes a little while to finally put it all together. And I'm telling you, he's riding really, really exceptionally right now. I love how aggressive he is on some of these mounts. I felt like everyone thought early on he was going to be sort of the next rider in New York a number of years ago, and it just took a little while, but I think he's just riding fantastic right now.
What he did at Aqueduct was amazing, and I agree. He really does seem to have kept that confidence from late in that meet where he made that furious run to get the title and kept it with him.
Yeah.
Yep, through Belmont, and now apparently at Saratoga. I mean, these aren't just winning when you're on the best horse. These are stylish runs. I mean, a couple of 11-1 shots. Are we ready to start upgrading Cancel? I think I'll look at it. If it's a spread race, I might say, okay, I'm going to put that one in. If I'm on the fence between two and Cancel's riding one, I might lean towards that one. I'm not going to do anything crazy, but I don't think it's nuts to pay attention to those short-term fluctuations in form. You can sometimes get out ahead of the crowd, get out ahead of the computers when you're willing to take a little bit of a stand on something that's, it's not a hunch, it's data-based, but maybe it's theoretically too small sample, but that's how you get the value. If you wait till that trainer that starts off the meet 5 for 5, if you wait till he's 1-5, I mean, it's useless. You might as well start betting against at that point.
And I'm guilty of, along the lines of that with biases, I'm guilty of waiting too long to the point where it's abundantly clear and everybody and their brother's taking advantage of it and you have no edge. But I agree with you with instances like this, you're still going to get big prices with the mounts that he's on because he's not riding 1 or 2 for Chad. He's not riding 1 or 2 for Todd. He's not riding 1 or 2 for Asmussen or anyone else. You're still going to continue to get these prices. And this is a way that maybe he does continue to get some more mounts from some of those bigger barns. And eventually, I think basically a long-winded way of saying you're still going to get good prices on mounts that he is on that you think right now, or feels like anyway, he's just in the zone. I feel like he's taken that step forward that many people thought he was going to at some point.
And I love that he's doing it in different ways. I mean, it's one thing to have a bag, if you will. One thing to have a skill that you do and you do well. I think of Luis Saez and how just great he is on the front end. Not that he can't win on a closer, but you know what I mean? I think of his signature rides and they're all there. It's pretty cool when it's dirt, it's turf, it's speed, it's closers. It speaks to something I think inherent in a developing skill set that is absolutely worth paying attention to. Let us know. Let us know what you think. Who are some of your favorite riders at Saratoga? People who you're looking for this meet to do well. We would love to hear that story. Chris points out the 4 getting the same trip, a rail skimming ride, presumably 1 year ago here at Saratoga. Steve, very, very nice. Steve gives a nice shout out to our Saratoga lifestyle pod. We had a lot of fun putting that one together, Matt. We did 2 hours on things to eat, drink, do, see in Saratoga, and of course, barely scratched the surface. Such is the life up here. I'm sure you'd be a good contributor to a show like that in the future.
The problem for me is, and I'm guilty of this with street names, with other things, wherever it may be, I love where I go. I don't remember the name of anything. So
you gotta like check in on your social media or take. You know what I've started to do about that, especially with like if I'm in a weird place like wines and beers, but also just names of places. You bust out the phone, and then you've always got a rec, and that's super easy, and you don't have to feel. Some people. That's what I would say you should do as far as that goes.
What I've started doing, and it's so embarrassing too. Like when I get paired up with folks when I play golf, if it's with strangers. I hear, you greet yourself, you introduce yourself. Oh, your name's so-and-so. And the moment that conversation is done, I don't remember their name. And I feel like just a complete jerk. So I've started writing their name down with like a little indicator on the card.
That's funny.
I feel like I need to just do that in general. This is bad if this is happening, by the way, when I'm 31 years old. What's it going to be like?
By the time you get to 48, like me, your host. The one trick I've heard that works with that situation, we'll throw this out there, for name recognition. Have you tried saying the name back to them? It helps a little.
I have not, but have you heard about the moment you meet someone, you hear their name, you then equate it to someone who you know with that name?
Oh, that's good.
And I've done it a couple times and it's worked, and other times for me it hasn't worked. But it's definitely at least a way for me to kind of, if I think of Peter Thomas Fornatal, Peter Rotundo. You think
that
of
other
common,
Italian.
Yeah.
Oh, pretty funny. David Browning, look at this man. Look what he's up to. He hits another one. 51.80, the leading score. We've got the top three. Julie Leboyko's right there. Michael Domable, who's going to be doing some writing for us over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com, covering the Colonial meet, which I'm really excited to see. He's been in a whole lot of those games. Good to see his name up there. And yeah, a bunch of people ended up with this 4 in this spot. We'll give a few more shout-outs going down the line. Todd Van Dree, Robert Fabricatore. I'm guessing he was rooting for Yazzuri with me last Sunday. Gary Adley, Bruce Meyer with 2 entries. We've seen Bruce use this strategy very effectively. And Bruce, I think Bruce was Oracle in the comments before, if I'm getting my handles correct. We've seen him do this with the multiple entries with similar picks, and then sometimes he splits and sometimes he goes the same. Little bit of a hybrid approach here. I really like this, almost like multi-race betting. One of the cool things on HorsePlayers.com, who I probably haven't plugged enough in this broadcast so far, which is a great place to do all your qualifying for the 2 biggest tournaments there are, the National Horse Players Championship and the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. But with these pick and pray events, that means you put in all the picks before the contest starts, prevents people just playing horses because of the prices they are late in the game. And it's kind of cool because you can see who people pick. So let's say, you've noticed how great of a job David Browning's doing in these contests. At the beginning of the contest, once the first race goes, you can see his picks. So it's not like you can copy them for the contest, but then maybe you're playing a double or pick 3 later, and there's a race where you don't have a strong opinion, and you see David Browning put 3 entries on the 4. Maybe you want to throw in the 4. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good way. And I haven't done the full dive on it. And I don't know if you wrote about it in the book or had spoken to someone about it, where they would go through and basically analyze the results of the winners or the folks who did well in a certain contest, and then kind of reverse engineer it and try to use that going forward as some helpful tidbits to, what was it about this horse? Let's just use the race that we just had. What was it about the 4 that so many people liked? And you go back and you try to kind of conjure up the rationale or the reasoning behind it and try to use that to your advantage in the next instance, the next time that you're in that same kind of position.
Does anybody watching live with access to comments want to give us their case for the 4? I'd love to hear what it was. Oh, here's a great note from Joe. Speaking of jockeys, who we were talking about before, Dylan Davis with a couple of consecutive double-digit odds runners, and Dylan was riding so well before the injury, and this is a trend you'll see repeat itself over and over again with riders. They come back from injury, and they're a little bit hungrier, and they're rested, and the injury is behind them, and they can build that positive momentum. So Dylan Davis, I think that's a really good call on a rider to potentially pay attention to. Steve is a big fan of Tyler Gaffalione on turf. The Gaff Daddy. I like that. We might have to steal that one, Steve. So yeah, let us know. We're curious to get your opinions on all of this stuff. One caveat I'll issue. This is a little down the rabbit hole, but these are serious contest players. They can handle it. So because your picks in the pick and pray are revealed, very often you'll have pick and pray contests and live contests at the same time. Be aware that there are cheeky people. Horse players are cheeky people trying to get an edge any way they can. There are people who will pay attention to what picks you put out in the pick and pray contest, and then potentially try to block you or thwart you with those same picks later. So I'm not saying you can't play in a pick and pray when you're playing live, but just know that information's out there. Now, maybe I'm going to make a bunch of people outsmart themselves and they're going to get really mad at me here, but I would just be aware of that. And if you're in a situation where you could get blocked, where you're worried about getting blocked, and your pick was published somewhere else, maybe you don't want to pick that horse in your live contest if you have another idea. Anyway,
hey, look, I don't want to assume that this is what happened, but a few years ago when I was still working with the racing form, I was playing in a BCBC qualifier that Saturday, and going into the final race, I was in the lead. And oddly enough, Arklo's name's going to come up in here again. It was a race from Kentucky Downs, and we had done a stakes preview. And the horse that I liked was from New York. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but was in that 8 or 9 to 1 range. And I started getting into my own head of like, well, would anybody actually go and watch the video? just to see, maybe one thing or the other, right? I go, don't overthink this. Take the horse that you like. You pick the horse in the video. You're going to get a good price. You'll block some people that end up taking it behind you and just hope that the favorite doesn't win. The picks come in. I'm the only one with that horse. The next 50 people don't have it. And I couldn't help but think, I was like, either I was terrible with my handicapping and this horse has no chance whatsoever, or people did exactly what you said, at least said, well, I don't want to make sure that I've blocked myself out by taking the same horse that this dummy ended up picking in a video. So I don't know if that's exactly how it played out or not, but I couldn't, whenever the picks were finalized and I looked and I said, not one person has this horse.
That's amazing.
It was unbelievable. And sure enough, Arklow, he was the only one who could beat me, and he got up and he won the Kentucky Cup from, I don't know, it had to be 3 or 4 years ago now. And he ended up beating me to bounce me out of the BCBC.
Oh my God, that's too funny. Chris Couples can relate about being on the wrong side of that. Says he's had that card played on him before. We got a couple of people chiming in about the winner of the last race. Top Performance Fig on HTR, the handicapping software that Matt and I both I use from time to time, and I think Matt is back in a good run of using it as well. And he makes the key point that the price was going to be right, and sure, it was. And then here's a comment from John. Similar pattern to a win last year. I like that idea. Aqueduct in the winter, layoff back at Saratoga, training at Belmont, had opportunities to run there, chose to run in this spot. I love that. I mean, I love two things about that. The pattern thing of when horses win or run their good races, that's something that we as humans can do better than a computer. And it's something to absolutely pay attention to. And then that idea of just trying to think it through like the owners and what races mean to connections at Saratoga. The line, I think it was Keith O'Brien told me, 20 years ago, a win at Saratoga is worth 4 at Belmont. And people with that in mind, they're going to handle a horse differently. And when you can tell yourself that story and it makes sense to you, you can do you can do pretty well. Michael chimes in. We've now discovered the famous Matt picked him angle. we can get some extra winners. We can get some extra winners that way as well. Let's talk about
piggybacking on that real quick. The idea of sort of placement in things. This is not rocket science, and it's been well documented. But keep an eye at the end of the meeting, this Saratoga meet, with whether it's owners or trainers with aggressive drops and aggressive moves because they want to win the title. So it's not always a red flag when a horse drops in. I always think of like Chad and Klarovich. When they've got a horse that's probably a good allowance horse, and all of a sudden they're in an open 50, it's not really the red flag that they want to lose the horse. It's just that they want the win.
And I'll say, I feel like, Matt, that you're absolutely right that in the old days, I felt like that was a good last 2 weeks angle. Now, especially with Chad and Todd, I think you could see a horse in the first week that was taking a big drop like that. Just say, nope, they're thinking about the title. They know it's like a baseball team that the win in the win in September is worth the same as the win in April, really, in the big picture of life. So be aggressive, especially for those outfits that, whatever, the horse isn't going to win a stake, so let's get a win, especially a win at Saratoga worth 4 at Belmont, and then we have another stall that we can put the next horse in who we think is going to win a graded stake for. So, I mean, that you're too young to even know how good negative drop angles used to be, and the new economics of racing and what racing is all about now. It's very rare. It's very rare that I even consider it an angle. Maybe if I had some negative info on a horse, or there was a bad work and a drop, or if it's a smaller barn, I really don't like it at all. But with these, machine bigger outfits, I don't find them. It's hardly even useful to. I mean, it comes up, but it's not like it used to be. And John Gasper points out, and this is exactly right. With the purses raised for the claimers, you can still. It's not even a bad economic decision. Right. Sometimes you drop. We were talking about dropping for the emotional reason of the win at Saratoga, but let's just say you can win this big purse, get back money that way, and oh, by the way, maybe cash a bet. All of a sudden, it makes a lot of sense. It's
if the horse gets taken too. I mean, that's not necessarily that's what the end game is if you're in a claiming event, but the idea of, to that point, the purse structure is just so massive at Saratoga. Not only can you possibly win with an aggressive move, if the horse gets taken, all right, the horse gets taken, but it's not like you're going to be dropping into a 20 claimer. You're probably in a 50, in some instances an 80 or a $100,000 claiming event. You know, I just, to your point, the economics make it so that it's not really a crazy move anymore, you know?
Absolutely. I want to give a shout out to our friends. We're back as the opening act for the terrific Cocktails and Conversation show tonight. Frank Miramati, the Mir Man, he is terrific. Fantastic talker. He'll be on our network this weekend as well, doing a back and forth with Brian Skirka, talking about all the Haskell stakes. But they're going to be doing Haskell Day stakes, but they're going to be doing a deep dive on Cocktails and Conversation about the Haskell itself. I'm sure pizza will be discussed. Frank, one of the most knowledgeable pizza authorities in these here United States. I think I might put Paulie G ahead of him, and he does it for a living. And then I think Frank might round out that exact. They're going to have a lot of fun on that show. I think it's 6 or 6:30. Check local listings, but it'll be right here on the Breeders' Cup social media. And folks looking to get more of a deeper dive on the Haskell should absolutely check that out. Really, I love the job that those guys do on Cocktails and Conversation. I haven't been on one of those yet. Have you been on one of those?
Yes, many moons ago we had a little. They had the entire NBC crew roll through in like different segments. So we did that. Oh boy, I mean, probably 2 years ago now. I mean, it's been a minute, but they do a great job. And like you say, Nick and Britt, they keep churning out. They bring in great guests. They have, I think they get more into the stories and background sort of things than, maybe that's not our forte. We're the ones trying to go over the form and try to pop some winners. But those two, they're as good as they get when, as far as doing proper interviews,
Yes, indeed. It's covering the great sport of racing in their inimitable way. And as far as I'm concerned, two of my absolute favorite broadcasters. Nice to be opening the curtain for them on the Breeders' Cup social media programming here on a Thursday. Once again, Chris has to take off. He's going to send in some opinions for later. We'll read those as we get to them. I think we've got some time, and we should look ahead to the stakes race later today, Matt, this traditional opening day feature. It's not, I mean, maybe that's overstating it, but for the last several years anyway, for the 2-year-old fillies, we've got the Schuylerville grade 3 action going 6 furlongs on the dirt. I know you've had a look at this one. Very curious to hear your thoughts about it.
Yeah, I guess before we dive into it, what was the reasoning for the scratch of Happy Soul? Do we know?
I have not heard. I mean, okay. Wesley Ward, it doesn't need much reason, right? I mean, we know that he feels like he's very in tune with how his horses are doing on the day. I'll dig, while you talk about the race generally, let me dig a little bit on Twitter and see if there's any further intel about that we can bring to the people.
Well, and why I brought that up, she was far and away the most likely winner of the race, but I was kind of looking forward to getting inflated prices on other fillies that I thought could take a pretty significant step forward here this afternoon. So it's unfortunate from that standpoint, from a gambling perspective. I think now with her gone, the inside 2 fillies, both Pretty Birdie and Mainstay, from a pace standpoint, I think they are the speed of the race. Mainstay was really, really impressive, splashing home at Monmouth Park. Now, I'm always a little bit leery about wet track, first out of the box, blowout victories. But 4.5 to win by almost 8 lengths, that takes a pretty special animal, I think, to be able to do that sort of thing. So I think the inside 2 both make plenty of sense. I made them both 5-2 on my line. For me, though, the horse that was most intriguing, well, there were 2. I'll give you the one that I didn't end up picking because I think she's going to need more distance down the road. I think Queen Camilla's okay. I know maybe the figs don't suggest that. Antonio Sano doesn't ship just for the sake of shipping. I think he sends good horses when he thinks that they can run a little bit. I think back to Gunnevera. Queen Camilla is the kind of horse I think you get her out to closer to a 1-turn mile or 2 turns down the road. I think she might be okay. The horse I landed on, though, was the 9, Cartel Queen. A little bit slow on figs, but I loved that she was bet like a good thing in the debut at Keeneland. And no, she didn't get it done, but that doesn't bother me. She comes back at Churchill Downs. And in the grand scheme of things, I thought she had a really educational run there when she broke her maiden. She was down on the inside, a little bit of an uncomfortable position. The rider just tapped her with the stick at one point rounding the far turn, and she immediately moved up, right up on heels, got into a tight spot. She was eventually able to extricate herself, and she finished really, really well. The blinkers on doesn't really bother me. I read that Tom Amoss had mentioned that he thought that she was a little intimidated when she was down in and amongst those horses, and maybe this would kind of get her to sharpen up a little bit. I thought it was a really good, solid performance for a horse who, yes, she's light on figs, but at this time of year, I'm not going to let the fig be the end-all, be-all. We've seen these boys and girls at this time, this early in their career, jump up by leaps and bounds. The outside draw with a rad, I made her 7-2 now. I like the 9 Cartel Queen.
It's a good case, and we did hear from Chris that he was also in the mix on that one. I want to take a look and see, here's an angle on Cartel Queen, Matt. Microbiome ran very, very well in Victory back in race number 2. These two have been working together. I think Microbiome might have even had the better rated work, but still, just the fact that you've got that as another positive angle, that a winner on the card was working with that one. So that makes a lot of sense to me. The horse that I was interested in, my horse scratched too. I thought Pipeline Gal was going to be interesting, the other Amoss runner. And isn't that interesting? Trainer enters 2, scratches 1. That's often a huge push for the other horse. Now, I haven't spoken with Tom. I don't know, but it's a very interesting angle, and I think as good of a direction to go in that spot as anywhere. Curious to hear what anybody else has to say about the Schuylerville. I mentioned that we did have another vote from Chris for that one. And that's funny. I had looked it up. I could have just popped his comment on screen. I thought they'd work together, but I wasn't sure. And he makes that point as well about the little collateral form, cross card collateral form boost. Maybe I'll start using that.
I think another thing from an angle standpoint this time of year that I'm really interested in with the 2-year-olds, as opposed to getting caught up in the figs that they have run, I like to look, and I mean, this applies to all races, but specifically with the babies, look and see what the horses behind them came back to do next out.
Oh,
did
absolutely.
they improve or regress? Because to me, that it applies much more so with the young horses than it does for the older horses. The older horses, you kind of know what you've got at that point. With the babies, you can have a race that looks brilliant, and if no one comes back to do any kind of running, I mean, I don't care visually how good it looked. It was a bad race. This race for Cartel Queen on May 20th at Churchill, the 6th and 7th place finishers came back and earned buyers of 58 and 52 in their next start. The 58 did come on grass, but point being, those figs are close to the fig that Cartel Queen herself earned in Victory that day. So it makes me think that I'm not suggesting she's going to jump up 40 points here this afternoon, but if she takes a step forward that I think she's capable of, there's no reason she's not into the mid-70, high 70 range, and I think that puts her squarely in the mix of this thing.
It's a compelling case. All right, a couple of things on Happy Soul. Trainer Scratch heard Tom, and then Michael heard, I'm not sure if this is a rumor or reporting, that it was a fever. So we'll see where she ends up running next. I'm also curious where Pipeline Girl ends up running next. I had just liked the idea that Pipeline Girl had shown the ability to pass horses and had won going 6. I feel like the subtle difference, I mean, it's a significant difference between 5.5 and 6, even though it might seem subtle. So something else to potentially.
Part of the reason I brought that up about Golden Pal, and with that, we're talking about Kentucky Pharaoh with the idea of the stamina, the 5 to 5.5. Half furlong doesn't sound like much, but to your point, you bring up the 5.5 to 6 piece. I mean, a half furlong can feel like a mile,
100%. They're getting out a little late. 4 minutes to post here at Saratoga. Maybe that heat. I mean, I will say it was cooler. Just one of those things. Cooler in the backside, and there's some shade in that paddock. Whereas once they get out on the track, the sun is just beating down. Yeah. I had a cheeky friend text me that I should stop yawning on the broadcast, and I'll accept the criticism. But I'm not bored. I'll tell you what happened to me, Matt, and I think you'll appreciate this. I wrote about it a bit in my and then at theraces.com piece that just published on their website previewing the entire Saratoga meeting. I suggest people check it out. It's largely based on the stats work of Matt Vagvolgi, who does such a great job for us over at inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. And I cherry-picked a few examples and put them together, but I explained in my intro that the last time I had a night like last night, I know when it was. It was December 24th, 1979.
Wow.
When 7-year-old me woke up at 2 a.m. and was so excited for Santa Claus that he could not go back to bed for at least 3 hours. And in a weird way, I didn't mind it because usually I get insomnia, and it's usually like stressful. Did I send that? Did I send Drew that TPS report? Who am I going to get to cover Monmouth with me on the show on Saturday? Just, the mind starts racing with work things, and it's that. And this was not that at all. It was, I'm ready to go, folks. I can't wait for this. And I have to say, it's an experience that's delivered. I'm already giddy for 6 minutes from now when I can walk back over there and enjoy the stakes races and maybe have a cocktail. I meant to get over to our friends at Walt and Whitman Brewing in Saratoga and grab a beer. I was going to have a beer on the show, but I just ran out of time. I'm not sure. Last year we did all these Saratoga HorsePlayer Happy Hours. I was live from there, which was an absolute hoot. But it's a great problem to have. They're doing so well that they've extended their hours. I was nervous about doing it in a non-empty room. So I thought this was safer. But we want to keep the Walton Whitman involvement because I do love that place, and I think it's soon to be a Saratoga institution. Definitely one of the places you have to go and check out, whether it's to have a beer in the bar, a nice meal, or the cafe upstairs is also fantastic. But anyway, future shows we're going to have some Walton Whitman beer. But it was just that kind of atmosphere that it just electric charged.
Yeah.
But it's always like that, but it was so much more so for having missed last year. I know we had a Saratoga meet last year, and I'm glad we did. It was a wonderful distraction in the middle of a very difficult time. But let's face it, Saratoga last year, it was Belmont North, and anybody who tells you different is lying. We didn't have the horses coming in from all over the country on a meet-long basis, and we've got that again. And this ability to all be together in a celebratory mode, it's the VE day for our generation, as far as I'm concerned. And I can even remember it may have been on the first HorsePlayer Happy Hour we ever did. Early pandemic, nobody knows what's going on. We just know everything's amok. And I remember saying at that time, I'd heard the phrase COVID winter used by the great virologist Michael Osterholm. And I was thinking, okay, winter, 4 months. We do this for 4 months. Maybe we could be back in Saratoga for August. And I remember fantasizing and even saying the words, oh, what a party that's going to be when we get back to Saratoga. Obviously, I was ahead of the game. I'm an optimist by nature. I'll cop to that. But let me tell you, I was right in the sense of, oh, what a party it will be. It just took a year longer than I hoped it would.
Yeah, and let's hope that we never have to go through that ever again to get to a beautiful situation like this. But I'm with you, man. I'm looking forward to getting up there this year. I was one of the few fortunate ones that actually got to go to the track last year for an instance, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't Saratoga. And getting there with all the people in the backyard and the band playing and just you name it, going to the paddock bar or just hanging out, going wherever. There's something about Saratoga, and I'm not going to get into the whole. I saw all the people going back and forth over the past few days while I was flying out here about what's better, Del Mar or Saratoga. I'm not going to get into that because I don't really care. But the idea of
why can't they both just be great? That's
just and even if you don't like one of them, who cares? Just shut up. but the idea of just being able to go out there and have a good time and not be thinking about basically life. I mean, I don't have a better way of putting it, but when you go there, you have an opportunity to just kind of let loose and not think about the real life stuff that we all have to deal with. And especially on the heels of what we dealt with for that, 15, 16, 17 month stretch of time. So I'm very much looking forward to getting up there. It's a shame it won't be till the end of the meeting, but now it may very well be 2 different trips. So I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, fingers crossed we get to see you sooner rather than later. Shout out to Azo, who thanks us for the show. Lenora says hello. Lenora, we will say hi back to you. This is cheeky, but it's funny. I think you'll appreciate it. Before it's too late, shout out to Matt's driver. I'm assuming his lovely wife for a very smooth ride. ITM should cook in gas money, especially in California. Totally fair. Send me a bill. We'll send it to Drew, actually, but let's get it done.
The funny thing is, I was waiting for some comment about how smooth it is right now, because we are driving through and I realized we're off the road for a minute, and I'm like, where are we going? We've been sitting in an In-N-Out parking lot and she's over eating some hamburger over at one of the picnic tables. She keeps waving over and she's like, I have food. I'll get to it in a minute. We're good. We've only got a couple minutes left. But
we could tell her she got a nice a nice shout out there from Tom.
But yeah, she was pinch hitting as far. Typically, I'm the one that does the driving whenever we go anywhere. And I said, look, timing wise, on Thursday we're gonna need you to pinch hit. She's like, that's fine. We can handle it. So
that would have been hard. That reminds me of the time that JK dropped in from the road. I think he was driving and doing the thing, and I think it was John Gasper who made the comment. It's amazing that JK's Uber passenger doesn't mind him doing the live stream while he's on the. I blew the joke by fumbling the word, but it's my brain is tired. I'm gonna cop to that 1,000%. Though Joe has sympathy for me. If you weren't lying awake in bed at least a little bit last night, you've lost your soul. I can't disagree. Especially if you had the opportunity, like me, to be one of the fortunate ones who are here. Can't wait to hear what the announced attendance is on this one. They definitely went to post late here. Not sure what's going on for that. Yes, John says that was me. Good line. We got it on there. I did tell JK that on air, I think, and he appreciated it. He was not. He was not offended. He was not offended at all. So,
Pete, I know you said you haven't really looked at Saturday at all. Just a couple things to kind of flag with everybody. Diana, maybe it's not the vintage, rendition of it, but at the same time, it's a pretty darn good race. You've got the fillies coming in for Charlie Appleby that ran in the Just the Game. They'll be back in this spot. You've got a number of other horses that have done great things. Harvey's Little Goyle's a Grade 1 winner. Pocket Square is interesting for Chad. I still believe in Magic Attitude. I want to give her another chance anyway. Maybe at this mile and an eighth they'll help. But more importantly, at least to me, that Sanford on Saturday is a massive field. They got 12 2-year-olds going 6 furlongs. And I haven't done a deep dive yet, but I just remember how taken I was. It was on, I think it might have been the first race of the day on Belmont Day, when Witt won from 100 out of it and won by 100. And I just said, oof, first time starter, not supposed to win that way. And he's drawn down on the inside. I don't know if he's going to be able to work out some kind of a trip from down there. And frankly, again, I haven't done the work yet. I don't know who else is in this, but boy, I was really taken by that debut performance from Witt.
Definitely one worth shouting out. I forgot to give my opinion in this race. Ridiculous. I thought it's too late. But the 3 I thought was maybe a little bit of value business model, and then the entry looked super obvious either half with claims, and then I also was a little bit interested in the 2 Southern District, very similar profile, but the entry may prove very hard to down. I wonder. I wasn't paying attention. We'll see what price they got bet into when they flash it up on the screen here.
I had seen 3-2 at one point.
That's not bad, honestly. Interesting to see the 1A all the way out the back. Though I'll tell you, I don't generally I don't mind when you see one half of the entry on the lead and the other far back. Ajaweed maybe a little too far back, but we'll see how fast they're going. The horse does seem to be running now. Team tactics potentially in play for the Shadwell entry here. Arham going, to my eye, pretty darn well on the lead. I see Dak Daniels in the mix. We have on Sky Sports Racing, there's I forget where in England they're from, but a pair of brothers, they bet all the booze-themed names. And it was many moons ago now, but they scored out nicely on Dak Daniels. Surely they'll be back aboard in this case. Okay, real running about to start here. Looks like Arham's working pretty hard. A couple of longer prices in right behind. Dak Daniels down there maybe can get a rail run. Arham looks tired. Is going to have to really do some finding in this spot because looks like is that Clay the Lionheart making this big, bold move up on the outside. and then we'll see if any deeper closers are coming, and we'll also see if Arham has anything left. And there's that seam for Dak Daniels, who is going to make that bold run up the inside and looks to be finding, for me, inside the pole. Maybe it's going to be him head and head with this number 9.
Outside runners got steam too. 10.
Oh my goodness, this is a good finish. Dak Daniels re-breaks a bit there late in the matter. That race, it sure looked like the inside wasn't bad. I'll say that much. Made the run down there and then was able to re-rally down there. And those brothers in England are raising pints right now because they just cashed if they kept the faith with Dak Daniels.
I hope I never have to do one of these on a phone ever again. I hope I have a place where I'm not, doing one of these, and I hope nobody has motion sickness or anything. I apologize.
You did a great job, and thank you so much, Matt, for persevering. Great contributions of course, as ever.
Looking forward to the racing this weekend. Programming note for those who listen to the pod: there's no pod this coming week. I'm off this week. The following week we'll pick it back up. So just this one off.
Totally fair.
But yeah, looking forward to checking out what these 3-year-olds can do, and seeing if, boy, I would be terrified if Hot Rod Charlie built upon that Belmont, because if he does, I mean, he's not only one of the best 3-year-olds, he's one of the best horses, period, in the United States. So I think this weekend will be fun. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to. I tell you what, the other thing that's kind of brutal for me out here, my favorite golf tournament in the world is happening this week, and typically it's my favorite for a number of reasons. But on the East Coast, it's beautiful. You wake up in the morning, final round or whatever round you're watching is done by 1 o'clock, somewhere thereabouts. Out here, I woke up this morning. There was only a handful of guys still out on the course. Everybody else was done. Boy, it's a giant time change. We're gonna have to figure that out. But the Open going on, so there's a lot of good quality sporting events going on over the next handful of days.
I'll tell you one very quick thing, and then I'll let you go. You do not have to stay till the bitter end if it's going to be any kind of delay here. But did you notice the baseball game last week at Petco Park? It's supposed to be a pitcher's duel, Darvish and Scherzer, and Darvish gets knocked out of the box, 8-0 for the road team, and 8-0 the road team, multi-Cy Young winner on the mound. Padres come all the way back. I'm sitting in the 15th row with Susan and Perrin. Imagine trying to tell an 8-year-old the significance of what she just saw. It's like you could live to be 100 and not see a team come back from 8-0, let alone against Scherzer. And you got to see, Tatis hit a home run and all this, and the crazy home run from the
relief pitcher, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's insane. It was one of the funnest baseball games I've ever been to. Anyway, shout out to Petco Park. Go Padres. But anyway, you can check out, Matt. I'll take it from here. Let you guys get back on the road. But again, thank you so much for your contributions. Always a pleasure, my friend.
All right, guys. Be well. Talk to you soon.
All right, there we have it. The great Matt Bernier going to enjoy a well-deserved vacation for a few days. No Matt Bernier show next week, but he will be back soon. I don't know if he's on HorsePlayer Happy Hour next week. We'll figure that out. We haven't quite got there yet. Just waiting for producer Craig to tell me these scores are final. We'll read them through and we'll call it. But boy, that was a fun trip out to San Diego. Everybody thinks I'm nuts because I was out in San Diego right before Del Mar and didn't stick around for Del Mar. But there was no way, folks, that I was going to miss this. These are not final scores. This is halfway home, but we'll go ahead and read them. John Van Niel has taken over sole possession of first place with 56.70. Then we have a slew of people at 51.80. David Browning, Julie LeBoyko, Michael Damabil in that group. Gary Adley hanging tough in fifth place. Todd Van Dree and Roberto Fabricatore in a tie for sixth. Two Bruce Meyer entries still there. Crescencio de Kayanen in eighth place, tied with Steve McNatten, Pat Nufrio, who I met a few years ago at the NHC, Chad Shiana, Joseph McKay, who we hear from periodically, our buddy John Gasper, been such a positive contributor in our comments. He's also in that scrum with the 36.80. I'll read a few more. We'll give a shout out to Howard Yankovic, William Bamer, Brendan Lindgren, Aaron Reed, Kevin McIntyre, we know him from Twitter, and Howard Johnson. Pretty sure neither the restaurant mogul nor the baseball player, but you never know, folks. You never know. Okay, good stuff. That's going to do it, folks. Matt Bernier, thank you again. Thank you, producer Craig. Thank you, our friends at the Breeders' Cup, especially Haley Amos over there. Maybe we should have asked her who she liked in some of these baby races today. Shout out, though, most of all, to all of you, the viewers and listeners. One more quick shout out to horseplayers.com, horsetourneys.com for hosting us. But it's really the viewers and listeners who we like the most around here. They make the shows fun to do. And in this case, they support them. They support our fantastic Thoroughbred charities. I didn't talk enough about them this week. Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, doing amazing work for the horses that make this whole game go. Going to be hearing a lot more about them next week. I can promise you that. This show has been a production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos.